Guy, thanks so much for joining. I hit the record button because I didn't want to waste anything else. I'm so excited that you're here. I want to
Thank you.
start. Thank you. I want to start with remarkable people, both as the podcast and as the book, and ask the very broad question of: is there a criteria, or is it just a feeling?
If you mean criteria in the sense of like quantitative, checklists or something, the answer is no. It's like Justice Brandeis said, how you define pornography is you know it when you see it, right?
Yeah.
And my podcast is remarkable people, not rich people, not famous people. So I don't have any, for example, billionaire hedge fund managers because I don't consider them remarkable. Although now they're rooting out plagiarism because that's America's biggest threat. Um, so it I it's really sort of gut feel. It's not because you're rich or famous. It's kind of like somebody says, I'll give you some examples. So
Yeah.
I just had a guest who visited every country in the world without flying to them. And so,
Mm.
that's such an interesting story, right? And so I consider that kind of thing remarkable. I have had high school teachers from rural Oregon on. I've had several criminals who came out of jail and now they're like really famous artists. Like I'm looking for that. I'm not just looking for, here's the CEO of Goldman Sachs to tell you about, Q4 predictions for 2024. I could give a shit about Goldman Sachs.
Yes. I think like that's the thing I think about when putting together a podcast too and curating it is there's the obvious, especially when we're the Shorty Wars, of the obvious, people and places we could go. But what I'm always curious about is, and you give the example of the hedge fund manager, right? When you spend so much time doing one thing, right, you become remarkable at that only one thing, right? And it's not very, it's not very broad. You can't really have other things that you call upon for depth. I think it's, in that answer, it's in the differentiation. It's in the unique nature. Like, yeah, I've heard of somebody who's traveled to every country. I have not. I'm actually mentally processing boat. Okay, how this is, anytime you can actually kind of pause and
Yeah.
go, ooh, I think that's probably a good sign.
Well, for me, I think one of the richest veins is the MacArthur Fellowships because
Yeah.
those are interesting people that you'd never heard of, right? Like, this wood sculpture or this clown or this mime or who knows, right? MacArthur Fellowships is rich vein for podcasters.
Good to know. Love it. Um, what's been the most surprising moment you've ever had as the interviewer, not as the interviewee?
Um, Surprising. Well, I told you I'm so well prepared and researched. I don't have any
Me too.
surprise.
How did that happen?
If you believe that, I have some beachfront property for sale.
It's perfect.
uh, I, I know you're looking for that like total aha moment, but let me tell you a story that Angela Duckworth just told me, which was, I thought, just a
Love it.
great story. So, she talks about her youth and how her father was a huge influence, extremely demanding, wanted to just push her for strive for achievement. And she tells a joke that she told her father that she didn't want to be a doctor, she wanted to be a teacher. And so the father had to mull that over for a day. And the next day he came back to her and he said, well, if you're going to be a teacher, I think you should be Secretary of Education of the United States. So that was his fallback position for Angela. So she tells this story about her father, and then she says, her mother, she never realized, because her mother had she was very remarkable. She came from Taiwan or China, not speaking English, came to America by herself, dedicated her life to her kids. but she always wanted to be an artist, but she subordinated that personal desire to be a mother and a wife. And now at 89, her husband is gone, Angela's father is gone, and now she's blossoming at 89, and she's finally becoming the artist that she wanted to be. And Angela tells this story that she's 89, she's living in assisted living, and she goes to the manager of the facility and says, I want another room. And he says, aren't you happy with the room you have? And she says, no, I'm perfectly happy. I want another room because I'm going to use it as my art studio. 89 years old, living in assisted living. She's now creating an art studio. I love that story.
I I love all those stories of like that you don't have to wait long for or you can. Torre and I were talking about a story about someone who waited 60 years to pick up a guitar again and become great at it. Those things are fascinating to me. So I think there's, to the audience, there's a little bit of remarkable in all of us. You just have to probably tap into it. But what made you? I like asking this question specifically because it pertains to people who have written multiple books, and I'm always fascinated. Well, I'm always fascinated with the behind the scenes promo of books, right? But because I'm a PR person, but I'm more fascinated with when does an idea become a good idea, go from being a good idea to a book? When are you like, yes, it's time?
When you get the first advance.
That is the most honest answer. Everybody just reverse engineer it. If you get the advance, then come up with a good idea. There you go.
People have asked me, why'd you write this book? I said, I got a big advance. And there's a very good story about Tom Clancy. So Tom Clancy was in a press conference announcing his latest book, and some reporter asked him, what's this book about, Tom? And Tom Clancy's answer was, it's about $25. That was just brilliant.
It's true, though. I think one of the reasons I wanted to chat the most is that you are honest in your feedback and you're honest in the representation of what it is that you do, right? You run this scenario 100 times of your life. 1 to 100. Where is this version?
Where is this version of the book, you mean?
No. Just your life and your career. If you got to play it out 100 times, A/B test this 100 times, and what percentile do you think this is?
Just to be clear, higher is better.
Higher is better, and I do want to be clear. Yes, I don't want that to be confused. If you say 1, that's bad.
Okay. This is 95. I mean, I'm.
Yeah.
I believe my podcast is the best work I've ever done in my career, and it's because of all that I learned previously in my career. I could not do this podcast nor write this book early in my career because I don't know about you, but to be a podcaster and a podcaster who does interview style podcasts, I see it as sort of a couple 3 circles, where circle number 1 is who knows of you as opposed to who knows you. Knows of you, because if they know of you, they're going to come on your podcast. And I'm lucky that way because many people know me of me because of Macintosh. So that's one circle. How can you get to the Jane Goodalls of the world? The second circle is, do you know what to ask Jane Goodall, whether it's research or insight? And the third circle is, do you have the balls to ask her what you should ask her? And if you draw those 3 circles, who has access, who has knowledge what to ask, and who has the balls to ask, I'm in that circle.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, because it's so common. If you have contacts, you have a podcast, right? But then what do you do with that, right? I don't want to downplay the skill of just being shameless and asking someone, because that takes a lot. Being able to, thankfully I work in PR, so rejection is my day to day. I love it. I live off of it as my fuel. But that said, I want, I think, and I think you were alluding to this, like, I am trying to become a better listener as a podcaster
Yeah.
because in different iterations of what I've done, I've had to be a speaker. And being a speaker versus being a listener is a much different and much more difficult process for me
Oh
as an
yeah.
extrovert. That to me, I would not have been able to do this even 5 years ago because I would have been overstepping and not leaving that intentional pause.
I would bet that as a PR person, so you
Ooh.
basically, you're trying to get on Gary V's podcast, you're trying to get your client on Tim Ferriss, Guy Kawasaki, Terry Gross. Wait, don't tell me This American Life, maybe even Joe Rogan, Mark Maron. And I bet you that Chat GPT could make your pitch so much more personalized and individualized for each one that it would increase your hit rate. Now, I don't know what your pitches are now, so I'm not criticizing you, but
No, no, no. I like
I
that.
bet you that if you went to Chat GPT and said, write me a 250 word pitch for me to get my client on, Terry Gross's show, I bet ChatGPT would do a pretty good job.
Well, I think there's this. You've opened the window, so I want to go there. I think there is this idea that AI and generative AI is going to be there to enhance the things that we do the most. And I think it's also just as pertinent to do the things that you don't want to do. One of the things that I'm 15 years into PR, and one of the things I commonly tell people, I'm like, I don't think if you just try and process this for a second, and you're not in the industry, and you say, okay, you're going to spend, this is the inherent flaw in the exercise. You're going to spend the majority of your time crafting the most delightful pitch with the best content to a person you do not know, in the hopes that out of the kindness of their heart and not with any incentive, they are going to want to do said thing. What is the likelihood of that happening? Not much. So even when you're saying, "Hey Jeff, you can improve your pitches," I was like, "Guy, I don't pitch." I mean, I do and I don't, but in my actual work, I don't. I pitch more for this podcast than I do in my actual work because I built a system where I don't have to because I don't want to, and I think it's flawed.
So how do you get your clients what they want to get on?
Knowing the same person who's done that for years on the other side. So I just go to them and go, "Hey, you know those other 9 things I've done with you and they were good? This one will be good too. Don't worry about it."
Well,
It's not a thing that you can duplicate. So I don't go out here. It's not like I'm doing a LinkedIn learning on it where I'm like, "Hey, just have all the context I have and you'll be fine."
well, you know what? For me, when I am being a guest, excuse me, yeah, for me, when someone asks me to be on their podcast, I swear 90% of my decision is made by asking who else has been on it. And
Fair.
I cannot tell you how many times podcasters give me a list of 6 people I never heard of. And so that's not helpful. So now, me as a podcaster, when I ask people, I know they're thinking like that. So basically, every pitch I have is in the past, I've had Jane Goodall, Stacey Abrams, Mark
Hmm.
Maron, Angela Duckworth, Stephen Wolfram, a couple MacArthur Fellows, et cetera, et cetera. And listen, God was very good to me. My very first guest was Jane Goodall, right?
That's
Like
small guest.
number one is Jane Goodall. So
Few people know
after
her.
episode number one, who's gonna turn me down?
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. That you I mean that's just the common thing. Lead with something good, right? Because
Yeah.
then that will make it easier. Yeah. Yeah, Guy, we're going to put you in the promotional materials. Don't worry about it.
Well,
You'll be in that list of 6 starting now.
what do you think? So listen to this. So you know what? I am best for your promotional materials. No, wait, no, I I would be better and better for your promotional materials if I sold more books, right? So the more books I sell, the better it is for me being like, window dressing for your podcast.
I like this logic. So let me follow. Okay, if Guy sells more, I'm doing the math in my head right now. So if Guy sells more books,
Right.
or if Guy sells more of remarkable people, Guy becomes more famous. Then when we're trying to promote the It's No Fluke podcast, then using Guy to promote that is better for us. I get it.
you know, the rising tide floats all boats, bro.
We don't see we. You know what? We did a math problem. We didn't even do a promo. Look how that happened. When when you were early in your career, was it easier or harder to make those bold asks?
Oh, harder. I mean, if somebody tells you it was easier, they're bullshitting you or they're clueless. I mean, listen, when you're younger,
There's value in being clueless, though. That was my only hypothesis, is you might not have known what you were getting yourself into. I think your answer is correct. Continue.
well, when you're young, I mean, you're worried about your future, you're worried about your resume, your reputation, you're worried about making money, you're worrying about attracting people to go out with. You got a lot of worry. As you get older, all that kind of, I don't know if it goes away, but it gets reduced. So you can be more bold. So yeah, I opened up this book with a story of how in 1997 I was in this marketing meeting and Steve Jobs and the group was shown the first commercials for Think Different, the things with Picasso and Einstein. And
Mm-hmm.
at the end of this presentation, the Lee Clow, the person from Chiat, says to Steve, I got 2 copies of the videotape. I'll give one to you and one to Guy. And Steve says to him, don't give one to Guy. So I say, Steve, don't you trust me? And he says, as only Steve would say, I don't trust you, Guy. And this is one of those moments where, you think, should I piss off Steve Jobs? Should I take him on? Or am I going to regret for the rest of my life that time that I could just like strike back and be bold? And I decided that this is a man or mouse moment. So I said, Steve, it's okay. I don't trust you either. Now, that probably cost me a few million in stock options, but it was worth it.
you thought different. Um, yeah, well, it's an interesting time. It's like when to challenge and when to go with things. But I would assume that no one gets to a comfortable point in their career or a bold point or a remarkable point if they just go along with things.
Yeah. I mean, hard to imagine that's true. That, basically, if you just suck up your whole life, you'll rise to the top. It's hard to imagine that. I mean, it, I'm telling you, to be remarkable, you got to make a difference. And to make a difference, you have to have a growth mindset. You have to have a grit mindset. And then if you really want to pull it off, you have to have a gracious mindset that you're willing
Yeah.
to pay back after all the success.
I think that is incredibly key. Have you ever? I'll ask it differently. Does the feeling? I think everybody has some version of imposter syndrome in their career,
Yes.
but does it ever go away, no matter what
Well,
level?
I mean, I think it goes away if you start reaching the psychopathic delusional stage, right? So,
Okay, good.
yeah,
Okay, good.
do you think Donald Trump has imposter syndrome?
No.
And
do I think that he wakes up and goes, "Oh, I don't think I'm any good at anything"? No.
but I would say that. Well, first, I'll give you some observations. I interviewed 200 people. Probably 65% were women, and not one man in my podcast history has ever mentioned the imposter syndrome. Many, many women have mentioned it. And so I think it's very much gender related. I'm
Hmm.
basically saying men are full of shit. So So I don't think the imposter syndrome is necessarily bad. It's if I had to pick between imposter syndrome and entitlement syndrome, I would pick
Mm,
imposter syndrome because imposter syndrome at least implies some degree of modesty and humility and introspection. Whereas entitlement syndrome is just the opposite, right?
yeah.
So now there are ways to get over the imposter syndrome, which is to just, focus on, yes, look at my accomplishments, hang around people who reinforce you, not tear you down. And then I also think that basically when you look around the room, almost everybody has imposter syndrome. Some don't admit it, but
Hmm.
they do. Everybody does. In fact, if you don't, you're delusional.
I think that is by far the biggest difference between 30-year-old and 40-year-old me is that 30-year-old me was like, I have to project confidence and humor. And 40-year-old me was like, no, I feel a lot more comfortable just admitting when, you know what? No, I am happy where I'm at and sometimes surprised. I know that there's a lot of work that goes into it, but I'll give you an example. So you win the Shorty Award in 2014 for Best Business Blogger. Do you know who won it the next year?
I have no idea.
And why would you? Because you've already won the award. Like, I don't know who won it the year after. I won it the year after you. So imagine for a second, me being the person who is not going to be the person in the top 6 on anybody's podcast. Well, I should say that. Could be somebody's podcast. But I win it, and they're like, I'm excited. I'm ecstatic. And then they're like, yeah, and Guy won it last year. I was like, shit. Because I'm like momentarily like excited, and then also like, no, no, do not belong. Different kind of execution. The other thing too is that your stuff is built on massive evangelism and a lot. I mean, I don't even need to get into the background. And mine was I won because I made fun of hustle culture on Twitter.
So what's wrong with that?
No, it's just that yours was serious and empathetic, and mine was a joke. I
Oh,
still won. I've evolved into a person who is that somehow. Thankfully, my wife's a clinical psychologist, so
well,
that's probably why I bring up imposter syndrome.
first of all, you got to give yourself a break. Who gives a shit why you won? You won.
No, exactly. Oh no, I got to that point where I was like, well, I have it. You can't take it away. So
And,
literally.
if you're like this at 40, wait till you're 69. You truly are not going to give a shit. And I can tell you that from
Mm-hmm.
firsthand experience. I
Mm-hmm.
don't give a shit anymore.
Can you pinpoint the exact moment when you stopped giving a shit, or is it just a feeling?
I think when Canva had a tender offer and I cashed out, that was the moment.
I remember that we did a Twitter chat when you were probably early on at Canva. And
Yeah.
I even then, like, and I've worked for Adobe, and even then I was looking at it, I was like, yeah, right move. Knew it.
Oh,
Um,
those were the days, man.
money can't buy happiness, but it can allow you to not give a shit.
Well, it can.
Put that in the liner notes.
It can, but I hope people don't take this as too flippant. But when you and I say don't give a shit, it what we're really saying is
Yes.
don't give a shit about people who are above you and who think
Hmm.
they're superior to you and they're judging you. This is not to say that you should not give a shit about your peers and people you work with and stuff. Those people, you should give a shit what they think, but don't give a shit about these people who are externalities to your life. It's a fine line. I mean, I think Elon Musk doesn't give a shit about anybody, right? And I can't tell you I think that's optimal. He should give a shit.
He has moments where he like you almost think he does and then he doesn't, right? Or he gives you a logic. He's like, so if a few people die doing this, then it's for the greater good. But well, who's greater good? What are we doing here?
I
So
mean, even if you believe that, you shouldn't say that, right?
Yeah, it's an unpopular opinion to express out loud, right? Although we've gotten to a point in history where people feel far more emboldened and more comfortable to say unpopular opinions out loud. And I don't know if that's just the mass of media we have out there, or just whether that money or power does that, allows you to do that. That's a conversation for another day. But something is allowing people to feel emboldened. That is quantitative data. Uh, when you I think that's correct, right? When you're talking about, it's almost like keeping up with the Joneses, right? It's that, like, you don't, if somebody gets a new car, you don't need to get a new car, right? But I've had conversations with multiple people. There's a through line in this podcast where it's making friends during peacetime, right? When things are going well, you should be thinking about others, building relationships, thinking beyond to the next thing. Because if you're not pivoting, if you're not evolving, you're going to fall behind. You're stuck. I think that reinvention is going to be a thing that everybody has to do in their career. When do you know it's time to pivot or reinvent?
Well, in the famous words of Steve Jobs, you can only connect the dots looking backwards. Right?
Yeah.
So, I mean, listen, you're talking to a guy who majored in psychology because it was the easiest major at Stanford. And then I went to law school and dropped out after 2 weeks. And I went into the jewelry business. And the only reason why I went from jewelry to high tech is because of nepotism, because my Stanford roommate hired me. And so like if you said, okay, guy, let's connect the dots, you purposely majored in psych to prepare you for a career of evangelism. I hate to
Yeah.
burst your bubble. It was because it was the easiest major. What can I say?
I mean, yes. I started I started one semester as a history professor, and then realized it wasn't for me, and then realized actually what my true calling was emailing people all day long. So what I
What do you mean emailing people all day? You mean
isn't that what a PR person does? I don't know. That's not what I do, but I think that's my running joke. I think that most people assume that a PR person is not wearing a flannel, is super stressed, and has three phones on them at all times. No, it doesn't have to be the case, everyone. There's a better future out there for you. But
you should use Chat GPT?
look, if it's good enough to write a six episode arc of SVU, it can do your job for you, right? So let's try that. Yeah, I'm actually even dabbling in AI calling now, just because I'm like, why not? Why not? Let's try it. Let's see what happens. Let's.
um, I have I have found something that AI absolutely cannot do, which is because I've
Opinions.
tried it. So I've had guests, like let's say I interview Ginny Rometty. She was the first CEO of IBM.
Hmm.
So I go to ChatGPT and I say, Ginny Rometty, CEO of IBM, is going to be on my podcast. What are some questions I could ask her?
Oh no.
And and you could do this for me too. And you will see that ChatGPT isn't up to the challenge yet. It's gonna say you should ask Ginny about future trends in technology. You should ask Ginny about being a woman in tech. I mean, it's a kind of questions that is so obvious that you didn't
Hmm.
need ChatGPT or AI for. And 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 so that's kind of where I would draw the line. I have not been able to use ChatGPT to help me really prepare questions for guests because its understanding is so superficial. I mean, massive amount of understanding, but it's superficial for my purposes. I have to do the human analysis of formulating questions for my podcast.
Well, absolutely. I mean, there's like bias in, bias out with AI, but there's also what I've noticed is it's just absolutely terrible at opinions. It would lose in a debate every time because it generally kind of takes middle of the road. It doesn't really want to go in one direction or the other. And it actually, the only time I know that it's taking a stance or a direction is if I'm like, I'll connect the dots backwards and go, There's bias. Because otherwise, like I set up a small AI where people could just ask me a question, right? It's not me. And it's always like, well, I could see it from both sides. I'm like, no, I can't. I can see it from one side. I would love to give you my honest, unvarnished opinion, but yeah. So that's the difference I see with it. The interesting thing is, like, we're over 25 minutes in, and I have not asked you what it's like to be a person in tech or tech trends. They just naturally happen, guy. I don't. Oh my gosh! Although we do have a really strange missed opportunity. If we do a second one, we'll have to just do it based off solely generated AI questions. Super dry.
If if we wanted to do one just generated, I mean, if we wanted to do an interview with just generated questions, we could just listen to NPR. I mean,
This is it's no
you
fluke.
listen, I love NPR. Don't get me wrong, but the questions that NPR comes up with is like, oh, so at the age of 10, you saw your father murder your mother right in front of your very eyes. Did that
Mm.
affect you?
Can you see any examples where that might have made a lasting impact in your life? Oh, well, that's like that Bill Hader Keith Morrison skit where he pretends to be Keith Morrison from Dateline, and he's just like, oh, like it's almost like he's like getting excitement from talking to people about murders and murders that has happened to him. Yeah, I get that. I get that vibe from some kind of interviews. So it's like, tell me about the worst thing that's ever happened to you and how to make a baked ziti. Yeah, I mean that stuff is crazy, right? Also, but by the way, if we ever do that, we'll make sure that the AI generated questions aren't for you. Just as a plot twist, I'll ask what I would have asked Trump. So, doubt he's going to be on the podcast. What when you've given a lot of really good TED talks. You've given a lot of good speeches. I think you were absolutely renowned for being able to connect with people and draw them in quickly. Is there a set thing you do that you think about, a set mechanism that you use, or is it again you're just based off feel?
So just to set the record straight, I developed that reputation for connecting with audiences before AI. Okay, so
Yes.
you can't say that ChatGPT helped me do that.
Oh, I make terrible segues all the time, guy. But yes, continue.
I would say that the key to my connection with audiences, and it's something I really pride myself in, is first of all, I do the research, right? So if I'm going to go speak to a company, I really do the research and understand what they make. In a perfect world, I even try to get their product. So, if you're speaking for Lululemon, you go buy some Lululemon. I'm not saying I have any yoga tights, okay, but I'm saying I got your Lululemon shirts and shorts. And so you need to try their products. You need to be able to, like, if you, again, using the Lululemon example, because I recently spoke for them, I start off that speech by showing me in a picture in Lululemon behind the counter acting like a Lululemon salesperson,
There you go.
right? And I'm wearing Lululemon for the speech. And I'm talking about, I've asked my daughter-in-law and my daughter, like, what's the big deal with the yoga tights? I mean, well, and they tell me, yeah, I mean, they just make the best yoga stuff, and I need to know that. So a lot of it is just pure willingness to. It's part of being remarkable. It's grit that you are
Yeah.
willing to do the homework, and then I think the second component is that you are intellectually curious. So you're talking about Lululemon one day. The next day, this morning at 4:30 in the morning, I spoke to Flipkart in India.
Yeah.
And you have to be curious about their business. It's not just, you give speech 1A, which is, about excellence or about passion or about innovation. You've got to use their products. You've got to understand what they do. You've got to be curious about what they do and how they do it. And again, I'm being repetitious, but to the extent possible, try to become their customer.
I think that's important, right? This is born out of your experience as an evangelist too, because I would assume you have to be prepared to answer any question at any moment. And you have to be curious about something so that you stay passionate about it and want to keep talking about it. Those parts to me seem true. I
Yeah.
could you talk about the same thing for 30 years?
Well, in a sense, I'm proof that you can.
I wanted to leave that intentionally open-ended. Yes. I wanted to leave that open to interpretation.
Intellectually honest. I am living proof. If you do one thing right in your career, you can live off it for 30 years. That's true.
Stop it.
That's absolutely true.
I Yeah, come on. But yes, there's a different interpretation of that question, right? Because obviously you're not talking about the same thing every day. You can extrapolate and kind of say, yeah, it's generally the same thing. But I think that's what keeps you excited, is that you can have a different conversation with different people, and that it's not Groundhog Day. You are doing different things and immersing yourself in different things. It would be really awkward to do a Lululemon speech in a Brooks Brothers suit and then just, have two lines in the speech where you go, insert Lululemon. We like Lululemon.
Yeah, I mean, I would never do that. And another benefit of this concept of using their products or whatever is you get a lot of free stuff
Ooh.
because in the in the briefing meeting before the speech, right? Because there's always one of those, because they want to make sure that when you speak for Lululemon, you're not talking about Nike or something, right?
Mhm.
And that's the time you ask them, what are the big issues? What should I avoid?
Yes.
And then when you say to them, listen, to really make a great speech, give me $500 worth of certificates so I can go try all the Lululemon stuff. And I guarantee you, every company will say, yeah, please. I mean, we want you to have really relevant conversations. So you get a lot of free stuff and you get to have a better speech. So it's a win-win.
If you're a speaker, evangelist, or an extreme couponer, Guy just gave you valuable advice.
That's why I always speak for car companies.
I think mine would primarily be West Elm. I'd just
Yeah.
be like, I gotta sit on all this stuff to really know how well that's doing. Or Shankman and I have made fun of the fact that there's the exercise bike behind me that's not a Peloton, but looks exactly like a Peloton. So, sorry.
But I mean, okay, so we're being funny and all that, but it is true.
It is, absolutely.
Using products really helps you make a better speech. And I also think that um, if I were the client, I would view that as a sign of this person at least cares, and like you said, they're not just going to insert Lululemon in one place in the stock speech. So if I were them, I would be happy to do that. I mean,
Yes.
it's a real tell if the person doesn't want to have a prep meeting, a briefing, and doesn't ask to try stuff.
Well, it's an extension of listening, right? In marketing, like
Yes.
if you come in with a preconceived notion about a company and then you're willing to give advice without first listening to what the consumer thinks or any of the feedback, or asking the very simple question, I thought this was one of the most important things you said the entire podcast, which was what not to say.
Right.
What has already been tried? Because the worst thing to do in a room is give a speech and then they're like, oh yeah, we tried that last week. So that's where the research is important. The listening and the research gives you confidence that what you're going to deliver is valuable.
Well, I mean, yes, absolutely. And I'll tell you, I think a very good perspective. I don't know how we got on this topic, but I think a very good perspective is rather than having the mindset that I'm, quote, giving a speech, you should have the mindset that we are sitting around having a few beers and we're talking, right?
Yeah.
And and when you are sitting around having a few beers and you're talking, you're not using words like revolutionary and innovative and curve jumping and
Digital transformation.
this,
No one's ever had a beer and talked about digital transformation. Let's be
right,
honest.
right. You're talking about, holy shit, I put all that in my shopping cart, and the next time I went back, it was all gone.
But yeah, that part is true. How we got to that topic, I have no idea. This again is a choose your own adventure with two people. That's the beauty of a podcast. But I think people are getting good lessons, even if they're indirect, right? Like I think the best lessons are when we answer questions
Yeah.
unexpectedly and honestly, right?
Oh.
But obviously you've done research. When
It's more interesting for the guest too, rather than being asked.
I know. I never want to know. I don't know how you feel about this. This is actually a good question, which is super meta. Are you more nervous as an interviewee or an interviewer?
Um,
You can also just say, I'm never nervous, Jeff. Why would you ask me that question?
I hate to tell you, Jeff, but that's kind of true.
That's good. Well, okay, let me extrapolate without, let me let the joke sit.
A nervous guest right now.
No, not at all. No. Do I seem like a nervous interviewer?
Not at all.
Okay. I think if I can tie everything together, right? It's the no. This is where I'm one of those people that have been doing like one of those like 5-minute paintings that it all makes sense at the end. No, like I'm here for your workplace bonding activity. I think when we talked about not giving a shit, right? It's the ability to have the confidence that you've prepared enough and you feel like even if this goes poorly, I'm okay. I think there's a huge amount of confidence that can be gained from not approaching any conversation or activity with desperation. You want it to succeed, otherwise you wouldn't do it. You want things to move forward. But if you come into anything desperate or nervous, and nerves are real, nerves can happen. Those happen all the time. But if you come into something with desperation and it's apparent, it makes it tougher. And also if you're attaching all of your hopes and dreams to one outcome or one scenario or one situation, it's just not going to make you as relaxed. You're not going to be able to appear like you are having a beer with someone. You're going to feel like you are in a first interview that I had as a 16-year-old at Wendy's, where I didn't know what to do with my hands. I was terrified. And I also didn't want the job in the first place, but I was like, okay, it's Wendy's. We can do this.
And you know what? I would say that it takes a growth mindset to not be desperate. It takes a willingness to be vulnerable, to be open to wounds. And the more you do it, the easier it gets. And I'll tell you one more thing that not appearing desperate, I think, is inherently related to discipline. And I think discipline sets you free. So if you are disciplined and you're prepared, you will not appear desperate.
Mm-hmm.
So
yeah.
It's not even fake it till you make it. It's, make it till you make it.
Well, if you've prepared and you're disciplined, then you can improvise as you go.
Exactly.
You have the quiet confidence of knowing, I know the answers to the test. Whatever
Right.
you throw at me, I can figure it out. And if for some reason I get a B-, it's not the end of the world.
Yep. And it's, you know what? I mean, that's how you breed confidence. So it's repetition, it's discipline. And after a while, you will not be desperate.
No. And I mean, there are real things too. Like when you were talking about that only women bring up imposter syndrome, right? Well, there's implicit bias. There's other factors that would lead me to believe why they would bring that up, right? There are other factors to why you might have less confidence in a situation, or feel like the outcome might not be the same. But that does not, I always want to say that my experience not be the same as somebody else's experience, right? I might have more advantages depending on the just by being a white male or whatever it is. So I take that into account when I'm giving advice. But I think the true line and the truism is that yes, if you can be fine with whatever result may be, there's your quiet confidence. Guy, when I close these, I do something called keep it short. There are 3 questions. The questions are short. Your answers can be as ever long as you want them to be. Are you ready?
I was born ready. Yes. What?
Okay.
No way.
Question 1. Anecdote story you've never told on a podcast.
Ah, shit. I use it if I have a good story. I'm using it. I don't have any good stories right now.
I will give you a lifeline. You can tell one you've already told, but you have to tell it differently. Think different.
Um. Okay, I'll tell you a story about taking the high road and
Ooh.
reducing your anger and miserableness in your life. How's that?
You already set it up. See, this is why I know you're a good storyteller. Continue.
Okay. So one day, my wife and I and son were living in San Francisco on Union Street, which is a very nice street in San Francisco,
Mm-hmm.
towards the Presidio, 1 block from the Presidio. And I'm outside of the house and I'm trimming the bougainvillea bush. And this older white woman comes up to me and she says, "Oh, you're doing such a good job. Do you do lawns too?"
Mm.
So I say to her, "Oh, I'm Japanese American, so you think I'm the yard man, right?" And she says, "Oh, no, 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 no. You're just doing such a great job. I'm just curious if you do lawns too." And
Double
so,
down.
wait,
Okay.
wait, wait. Wait. We're not even
Oh.
at the punchline yet. So, okay, so obviously there's a good story there about racial profiling. Okay, so that's one thing, but it gets better. 2 weeks later, my father comes and visits me. And I'm Sansei. I'm 3rd generation. He's 2nd generation. He served in the army. The whole thing about Japanese Americans wanted to prove that they're more loyal to America
Yes.
and not loyal to Japan during World War II. So I fully expect my father to just freaking go off on this story. Like, how dare this woman ask my son if he's a yard man? He went to Stanford. He worked for Apple. He's an author. And I tell you something, my jaw was on the ground. He says to me, "Son, Japanese guy trimming the bushes on Union Street in San Francisco. Most likely, statistically, son, you were the yard man. So get over it." And I tell you, that's the moment I learned to take the high road. It's like, you know, maybe she wasn't being racially profiled. Maybe she just wanted to know if it did good lawns. And even if she did, so what? I mean, you don't need to take that personally. And so take the high road, give people the benefit of the doubt. And that's the moment I learned that.
Well, and the exhaustion of if you had to check bias at every turn, that would take up a lot of your day.
Well, I mean, if you're always looking for a problem, you will find it. Just trust me. Yes, that's true.
This is accurate. Okay, that was an unbelievable story. Question 2. When you get people to write a quote on the back of the book, what do you ask?
Oh my God.
I was gonna bring it back to the book. You knew I was gonna do it. I'm a PR person. Come on now.
So how do I do it?
Yeah. What do you ask?
Um, okay, just so you know, or just so your audience knows, if you said to a business book publisher, "I can get you these blurbs for a marketing or sales or this kind of book," they would do backflips over the people I got, right?
Mm-hmm.
So
That's how you get the advance.
I have Bob Cialdini. Bob Cialdini is the godfather of influence. And I Jane Goodall wrote the foreword.
Yeah, that's pretty good.
Julia Cameron gave me a quote, right? So this is the kind of level of people I have. And then I didn't get it in time, but now Woz has given me a quote that says, I wish we had this book when we started Apple.
Mm.
So I have, Julia Cameron, Bob Cialdini, and Woz and all these people. But I tell you what, on the back of my book, unlike any other book in the history of publishing, and I swear this is true, I have a quote that I made into a blurb because during the copy editing process of this book, the copy editor, who you never would have heard of, except maybe some people mentioned the copy editor in the
Acknowledgements. Yeah.
but she basically said, I love working on this book. It was such a pleasure. And in my, I don't know, 30 years of working with Wiley, I've never had such a fun project. So I made that into a blurb from a copy editor that no one has ever heard of. And I did it because I wanted, a lot of blurbs are sort of, you help me, I'll help you. But
Yeah.
she didn't, that was not the context of that one, right? I mean, she has a lot of data. She's edited hundreds of books, and she said this about my book, and I don't think there's any greater credibility than that.
I mean, it fits the tone of the book first, right? Not to like, run play by play in a telestrator on what was an awesome story, but obviously it fits. Two, who more intimately knows the, every bit of every book for the last 30 years than a copy editor?
Yeah.
They have to spend the most time with our, unedited thoughts.
Yeah.
Sometimes I feel really bad when I send something to an editor.
I'll give you an analogy for people who don't understand the copy editing and finishing of a book process. It's like if you went to a car dealer and you went in the back and you asked the mechanic, which model breaks down the least? And the mechanic said, oh, it's the Honda Accord. That's the one to get. That's what it means when a copy editor says, this is a good book.
Yes. Yes. When can people purchase the Honda Accord of books?
Oh, I'm not sure I like that positioning.
No, I'm just kidding.
How about the Camry? Whatever you say, don't say Tesla.
No, not doing that. No.
Okay. So the Honda books will be available on March 6th. And I don't know when this podcast comes out, but here's a tip for you. And I didn't think of it. Give credit to Wiley and their contractor who came up with this idea. The idea is that if you pre-order the book, which you can do now, and you just basically tell us you pre-ordered it, give us your email address and sort of proof of purchase, we give you instant access to the digital version online.
Yeah.
Which is saying, you want to get a jump on being remarkable. You want to get a jump on your peers. You want to leave your peers in the dust. Well, you can read this book before anybody else because you can read it instantly. And that's an extremely good promotion. And I also think it communicates trust because with the link that we give you, theoretically, you could give that to anybody. And also you could easily fake purchase. But what we're saying is that, we trust you. We want to help you. We want to give you an incentive to buy now. So all you authors, you should do this when you come out with your book.
It's like you're giving the same trust as you would like members of the media. There are a lot of times when I forgot what show just came. Oh, it's the last season of Curb. which will kind of timestamp this. But the last season of Curb came out, and there were a lot of writers who said, I've watched the whole season. I'm not supposed to tell you all of the celebrity cameos, so I won't. I was like, well, yeah, good, because you're not getting any more screeners if you tell them who the cameos are to Curb. So yeah, that's an immense level of stress.
Hey, because you're a PR person, I'll really take you right down into another great aspect of this. Okay, this is Guy giving out his secrets. All right, so you better appreciate this.
This is question 3. I'm closing on this guy. Everybody is ready.
I'm still answering question 2.
No. This is question 3. Question 3, Guy. What are your secrets? Continue.
So I don't know if this is a secret, but I'm going to give you a really powerful tip. So if you're an author, not only do you say to people, if you pre-order, you'll get instant access. And the way you get instant access is you go to this website, this form, and you give us your name and your email address and proof of purchase, and then we give you instant access. Okay. So now, what's one consequence of what that person just did? I have
newsletter.
The email.
Yeah.
So now, on March 6th, I'm going to send an email to everybody who redeemed this, and I'm going to say, listen, please do me a favor. Please go and review the book now. And you know what? Most of these people will probably have bought it from Amazon. And on March 6th, Amazon will have fulfilled their order. So on March 6th, when I ask them to please go review it, it's going to be a verified purchase review.
Yes.
And how much better can it get than that? And I'll tell you another secret upon the secret.
Whoa.
I'm going to ask for this. Now, my book is good. I'm telling you it's good. You know it's good. You read it, right? And so you got to do this with a good book. Otherwise, it's going to blow up in your face. But I will also tell you something. And I learned this in the software business, that when you give people early access to a piece of software or a book, you are not only getting good feedback and good information on how to improve the product, but they feel special.
Yes.
And I want them to feel special. I want them to feel trusted and special. And when you feel trusted and special and you like the book, you're going to give it a good review. So all things line up there.
I think that's just the nature. There's more affinity. Anybody who's ever sent me a book in advance, I just automatically have more affinity, because I'm like, well, you've taken the time to do that, so I'm going to take the time to read that. Not just read half of it, but read the whole thing, because I feel almost a responsibility to it. It's the Midwesterner in me. But to bring this all full circle, the more people who buy Remarkable People, the more famous Guy gets. When we use Guy to promote this podcast becomes even more remarkable. Everyone wins. Guy, thank you so much for joining. This was an absolute pleasure. Just two Shorty Award winners for Best Business Blogger cutting it up. I appreciate it.
And who won it the next year?
I have no idea. I should have done the research.
Yeah. Oh my God. People are listening to this podcast saying, we just wasted an hour listening to these two clowns. What did we learn?
You know what? Don't focus on the exact words. Just read between the lines, and you'll get so many good lessons on how to navigate life, how to be remarkable. I'm proud of this one.
Okay. I bet you say that to all your guests.
75% of them.
All right. Thank you so much.
This season, we've added a second episode every week with the help of our sponsor, Wave, a one-stop money management solution for creators and small business owners. Even though we creators are one of the fastest growing segments of small business, our needs are often overlooked. Wave wanted to help change that and elevate creators who are making an impact. Last year, the Shorty Awards teamed up with Wave to create the $120,000 Elevate Creatives Fund, which is distributed among 6 recipients to support the creative work they're doing to bring meaningful impact to their communities. We'll be highlighting a different creator each week to share their incredible stories, breakthroughs, groundbreaking content, and more.